Here's a big game in the USA called the game. Now, a lot of Americans have invented plenty of games and sports and things like that, card games, and we all know when it comes to dating, and if you got game, then you probably could get some. So when it comes down to two things that we most commonly administer as Asian, we have Asian and Indian. Indians smell like dump and all the pajit stuff, and the Asians have all this small stuff that they're short, and other particular occurrences within their bodies are also short. So what we have to initially deal with is, why do we have to do this? If we want a decent economy, then we have to be respectful and trustworthy. And if we want to be respectable and understood to know that our history really prevails as what we are, particularly today, because America is really new and they have the U.S. military policies all over the place, bullying people, telling people how to get some, then we want to make sure we'll be able to achieve goals. Now, there are quite a few people like the Anguyans and the Anguyan look and the Indian Hrithik Roshan look, Aziz Ansari and many other people. But if you look at the whole majority, when we talk about Asian, people particularly think Asian is Sino or Chinese, so you don't really have any affiliation to Asian because you're Indian. And if you're Indian, then you're not really Asian, but there's still some Asian in India because of Northeast India. So back to the point of what I was really talking about. If you see the most successful occurrences of dating, it probably has to do with physical altercation. And a lot of people grow up just to be studious and figure out how to make some money, because the money that you rely on is just to make sure that you can have good food, shelter, and a nice car. Most people go extra and they study harder, which is predominantly the Asian method, and they try to get some luxurious cars. But there are also some Asians who rely on small and enough money, and they have decent cars or the mediocre cars that are not luxury, and they just get some and they just make some money and things like that. That being said, if you do come across as someone who's decent or wealthy, you do have to have some diaspora or disposition that you can defend yourself and really defend feminism. Now, if you look at most recently, as of yesterday, I think I was outside and I saw a couple of girls talking about how if you say that she's a woman in the workplace, then you're being advantageous and you're being discriminatory, because now that we've combated men saying I'm a man, so I have the power. Now women can say they're not women to have the power. So something like that around the bushes or whatever, beat around the bushes. They possibly can't do that anymore, because most likely it's been years since the last iteration of someone saying it's because I'm a man. Once again, most successful occurrences of dating usually has to do with physical altercation. Are you going to stand up, defend yourself, handle all the harassing methods of communication that other people have done in a card to you, that you are now yourself and really fit and thinking about what it is you do to do. Based on physical appearance, who is the most beautiful? We all know the American beauty standards have been discussed by many people, many races. People are just arguing with it because every day we have new children growing up to be 18 years old, and those 18-year-olds don't get enough exposure. The algorithms conform them. They don't really search. Their parents tell them something else, so that they don't really expand their minds and mess up the whole population demographic, because the low population of Europeans and Americans are white people are very low, and there's a scarcity of them, so it's desirable according to science, and there's so much Asians that it's not so desirable. Initially, there's also very few Hispanic people. It's like only 250 million Hispanic people. So if you do something like that, then you'd be able to achieve your goals if you understood that. But if you do look at other successful resources, and you do realize it has to do with money and physical altercation, but most likely it has to do with ignorance and exposure. So if you are dating and you are looking for some information, I hope this information has helped you. That way you can get some. And on a further note, if you particularly see that the information that you can gather by looking at images of different races and different cultures is that Asian people are particularly clean. They eat with chopsticks, and they talk about how clean and smooth things are. It looks aesthetic, as opposed to other people who usually have oil on their hands for eating with their hands and things like that. So there's a whole disposition in the USA that particular Indians have to come up with their own methods and designs, although there's a chamos, which is a spoon that keeps their hands clean, but those are all just excuses and crucifixions of hidden euphemisms and policy and global methods of who's going to be the one, because the American cannot be the one to be used to make money, it has to be someone else, because America is number one, and America has the best technology. Why is he not so sexy? Well, we don't know. It's some reason to believe. All right, so as of most recently, websites like Pornhub have really changed their algorithms, and it's now personalized. So if you particularly search a different nationality or race, then you'll see that more often. But what usually happens is, for the money in marketing, you see mostly what white people are watching, and they're usually watching their own people, just so that they can go around and say, none of you minorities are gonna get some. So then you see a lot of white penises shoved into white girls, and white penises shoved into minority girls, and this is what you end up thinking, like, hey, the last time I thought about sex or saw sex or some sex education was this white guy getting some. And the skeleton and the penis that they draw in their sex education textbooks is based off a white guy. So you're like, who the fuck drew this? Is a white guy. So when it comes down to dating, you have to have this mindset that a lot of these girls, when they masturbated for the first time or saw porn for the first time or got sex education for the first time, it was based off of white European, Anglo-Saxon, Nordic, Germanic, Caucasian, Celtic, White Aryan, and whatever the fuck else there is that they tell us that we should also make our races to compete with them to balance them out. And that's primarily why a lot of Asians aren't sexy. You have to go out of their way and really masturbate to whatever porn and figure out the exposure and say, but the likelihood of that happening is either Japanese cars or American cars or Korean cars at this point, thanks to K-pop. So it gets really slim and narrow, and then there's always either blue pen or